Everyone knows him, everyone loves him. At least, I hope so. Kaiba, for real, is my absolute favorite from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yes, he's arrogant. But who else is such a boss that they can just hop into a Ferrari, hand the dealer a check, and drive off without saying a word? Without a key! He might not be the king of games in Yu-Gi-Oh! But in Monopoly, Yugi would stand no chance against him.
Listen, Zork! I've been smacking around virtual monsters like you ever since I could talk!
Through all these videos, we already know that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga is a little bit different. But did you know that Kaiba's character development in the manga is on a complete different level? Besides a few minor setbacks, but we'll get to them as well. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Classic, I generally prefer the manga. But there are also aspects where the anime really holds its own. For example, I think it's super weird that Solomon was trapped in a VHS tape instead of a card. This way, Yugi could still talk to him. So he's kind of like Noah, just without internet. A major highlight is definitely Kaiba's Blue Eyes jet, as opposed to just a normal jet that's been painted a bit. How sexy that thing is! Then, of course, there's the entire Orichalcos arc, and in Duelist Kingdom, the fact that they don't play on tables, but on huge devices that generates holograms. Which really took Joey's scene skills with Mace cards to a whole new level. And Yugi dueling Joey in the final was really cool in the anime, while in the manga, they just skipped it because they shared the prize cards. The biggest difference though is that the Season 0 anime has nothing to do with the classic anime. This wouldn't have mattered much in the character development of most of the characters anyway. Most, except of course Kaiba. That's why it's even better that the manga connects Season 0 and Classic. You hear Joey occasionally bring up the death the amusement park, because he absolutely can't forgive Kaiba for that. Understandably, since he had to fight against Leatherface there. By not including Season 0 in the anime Kaiba lost a ton of character development. Like, a lot. And then the dub just finished the job. As much as I love the dub and find it humorous, I'm really glad that we have the sub which is closer to the manga. In the dub, Kaiba probably only knows the word development from the dictionary because, unfortunately, he never really got to experience what it is. A short summary. Kaiba begins his journey in Yu-Gi-Oh! With a clear attitude. I hate you all! Except, of course, my little brother Mokuba. He's cool. And how does this epic character development end? I still hate almost everyone, except Mokuba, and alright, Yugi is okay as well. That's only because he defeated him in a duel and saved their lives. That's pretty much it for the development the dub gave us. No matter how much you try to impress Kaiba with some mystical mumbo-jumbo time travel or magical revelations, the man remains completely unimpressed.
You may not yet believe in destiny, but before the tournament is done, you will have to face your past.
You know, I read that once in a fortune cookie.
If I were dipped into this world for just a second, I probably would be disappointed because this isn't the world of Dragon Ball. No matter how deep the story gets or how much all the other characters develop, Kaiba stays Kaiba. He changes about as much as the chances of Joey ever winning a duel against him.
I don't believe in all this ancient Egyptian nonsense, and I never did.
They did make the dub pretty funny, and his one-liners are absolutely top-notch. But there's just absolutely zero room for character development if the dub portrays him as stubborn. There was that one time in Duelist Kingdom when he trusted the heart of the cards. But that's pretty much it.
I have to trust in my deck, for the both of us.
I will also make comparisons now and then about how things differ in the sub and dub. But now, let's get into the real story of Seto Kaiba. Seto's and Mokuba's mother died during Mokuba's birth. Their father passed away 3 years later. After their relatives took everything within 2 years, they had to go to the orphanage at the age of 10 and 5. Things weren't really great there. But not so terrible either. They were some kind of happy, and Seto dreamed of building amusement parks all over the world so even poor kids could have fun. A little philanthropist with big dreams. That is, until the day Gozaburo entered their lives. Hoping for a better life with this wealthy guy, Kaiba challenged him to a duel. A chess duel, which Kaiba could only win by cheating. But instead of money and fun, he was subjected to extremely strict upbringing, like a Japanese student coming home with a grade of C. 6 years later, this world had turned the happy Kaiba into a bitter teenager who couldn't offer a warm smile anymore, only felt hatred and did everything to achieve what he wanted. For instance, taking over Kaiba Corporation because Gozaburo sold its virtual reality technology to the army, which Seto wanted to use for games. So he checkmate Gozaburo and took over the business. But for him, defeat was akin to death, so he didn't hesitate and jumped out of the window, laughing. Now Kaiba is the head of Kaiba Corporation with a 40% market share, while the Big Five hold the remaining 60%. However, this harsh world only teaches him to hate more, a ruthless world where he must work over corpses. Even though he's no longer selling weapons but focusing on game development, shifting the focus of Kaiba Corporation. Besides business, he's still a student and goes to school. That's where he meets Yugi and the others, who are initially nothing more than dust under his shoes, just like every other life on this world. But since he's also a card collector, he gets every card he wants, even if it means having to beat up other students. He usually buys, sells and trades though. This includes his attempt with Solomon when he visits his little Toys R Us and spots the blue eyes with a piercing glare. A card he's been searching for ages, but Solomon doesn't want to sell or trade it. Fun fact! Seto Kaiba is based on a guy a friend of Kazuki Takahashi talked about. This guy collected cards and Takahashi's friend asked him if he could teach him how to play with the cards. However, the guy told him to come back and ask again once he had collected 10,000 cards. Something that Kaiba also said to Joey word for word. This story made Takahashi extremely angry, but he also thought that this character trait would fit well with the character. Since Solomon doesn't want to trade the card due to his emotional attachment to it, he asks Yugi to bring it to school the next day to swap it with a fake one. Kaiba thought Yugi wouldn't notice, but he was wrong. Yugi confronts him about it, which he, of course, denies. After all, Kaiba couldn't care less about anyone else in the world. Even if Eren Yeager whispered something in his ear like, "Bring me popcorn and cola," he would just say, "Get lost, loser," and walk away. This led to the first duel between Kaiba and Yugi, a duel that was about to turn Kaiba's life upside down. It was a shadow game where dual monsters are brought to life. That was the moment Kaiba got into solid vision technology. Kaiba dominates with his enhanced Minotaur until the summoned skull ends it. The only way for Kaiba to win now is to cheat the stolen blue eyes from his sleeve. Something he's done over and over since his match with Gozaburo, even in tournaments, as he apparently couldn't win otherwise. So Kaiba is the real king of cheaters here. But he quickly realizes in this duel that cheating doesn't work, as the blue eyes refuses to be played and self-destructs, allowing Yugi to summon it on his side and end the duel. And since it was a shadow game, Kaiba receives a little punishment. He's trapped in a cart and taken to the dual monsters world, where he will be torn apart and devoured. Yeah, it's just a genjutsu, but still brutal. Mokuba wanted to avenge this defeat. He kidnapped Yugi with the gentlest means and ended up being punished himself, turning into a Kinder Surprise egg. And in another attempt, he only ended up poisoning himself. The Nightmare Feast wasn't just a one-time thing for Kaiba, he dreams about it every night. Yugi basically pulled an Itachi move on him, like when Itachi showed Sasuke 500,000 times how he killed their parents. To get rid of these nightmares, he seeks revenge on Yugi. For that, he takes them to Kaiba Land, where he first defeats Solomon in a duel, now wielding 3 blue eyes. Still showing no respect for human life, he drove the original owners of the dragons to the edge, with one even taking his own life. He also has no respect for cards. Neither for Joey's when he looked at them in Solomon's shop and then just threw them away, nor here when he tore up Solomon's blue eyes after the duel. A move none of us could ever forgive him. Kaiba's experience with the punishment now comes into play with the solid vision technology. He uses it to not only summon monsters directly, but also as a means of punishment to frighten Solomon. After Yugi and the others survive the Death Tea trials, it's time once again to duel with Kaiba. But just before the 4th trial, a game against Mokuba, we get a glimpse into Kaiba's cold heart. He neither trusts Mokuba to win against Yugi, nor believes in any form of brotherhood in the world of games. This attitude is further emphasized when he's ready to give his own little brother a heart attack had Yugi not intervened. And this wasn't triggered automatically. Kaiba personally pressed the button. Where is the loving brother who would do anything to bring a smile to Mokuba's face? He will have to search for him after his duel with Yugi, as the mind crush shatters his evil heart, sending him into a coma as his good self tries to piece it back together. It's Seto's very own Millennium Puzzle. Fun fact! The surname Kaiba was given to Seto and his little brother Mokuba, reflecting their original role as utterly despicable people. Real monsters. And that's exactly where the name comes from. Kaiba is derived from the Japanese word kaibutsu, which means monster or beast. And the name Seto comes from the Egyptian deity Set, pronounced Set-O in Japanese, who is none other than the brother of Osiris, better known to us as Slifer. And just as Seto would have killed Mokuba in the Death Tea arc, Set murdered his brother Osiris. It's clear then why he didn't get Slifer at all. Set is seen as aggressive and brutal, willing to do anything to achieve his goals. He always carried a Was scepter, which likely inspired Seto as the holder of the Millennium Rod. Yugi visits Kaiba repeatedly, but it takes a whole 6 months for him to wake up. Once awake, hearing Mokuba is kidnapped, he immediately sets out to rescue him. A huge contrast to how he was before. This development didn't occur in the anime at all. He didn't fall into a coma to find himself. Instead, he always loved his brother, and the mind crush simply extracted the evil from him, which was kind of cooler than using the previous owner of the string fruit, who distracts with the Kaiba doll. On the way, Kaiba learns about Pegasus' plan and thwarts an assassination attempt. Here we can see that Kaiba suddenly respects cards, even if it's his own. Upon arrival, he tells Yugi that he will be the one to defeat Pegasus and thus protect Kaiba Corporation. Yugi is somewhat surprised by this. Like, bro, don't you want to save Mokuba first? Although he's improved since the coma, he's still Kaiba. He's still mouthy to Joey, but at least he doesn't want to kill him after a duel anymore. He didn't even want his star chips, but just wanted to crush his self-esteem as a duelist. That's progress! He also says he wants to destroy Pegasus and that the others stand no chance against him because of his supernatural abilities. But when Yugi tells him that they are here for a reason too and will defeat Pegasus, Kaiba just smiles and says that he will beat Pegasus first, implying that he believes Yugi could handle Pegasus. And his claim about only wanting to save Kaiba Corporation is just a facade. Of course, he's here to save Mokuba. He mentions this several times during the trip, to Pegasus' bodyguards and to Pegasus himself. Just not to Yugi and the others, because Yugi is his rival and the others are his enemies. Therefore, they mustn't know that Mokuba is his weakness. Which doesn't happen in the anime, where he openly says he wants to save Mokuba. In the anime, the difference in Kaiba's character post-coma isn't as drastic as it was when he threatened suicide in the duel against Yugi. He's just a loving brother. He never showed he wasn't, so that remains consistent. However, in the manga, he ignored and disrespected Mokuba, had no sense of brotherhood and even wanted to kill him. And now, having somewhat found himself again, he would give his life for his brother. The transition from I would kill my brother to I would die for my brother really surprises you when reading. In the manga, we witness a much deeper and more complex development. The mind crush was more than just a nudge into the right direction, it was a complete game changer for him. In the anime, the beating Kaiba received did have an impact on him. Not that it made him love his brother more, that was always clear. But the heart of the cards, all that hocus pocus Yugi is into, it somehow got to him too. He now trusts his deck. At least for that duel against Pegasus. In the manga, it's a way bigger development, as we know he cheated in every tournament and as often as possible in life. And anyone who needs to cheat clearly doesn't trust their deck. So, Kaiba also made a 180-degree turn here. He also saw in the duel against Yugi that the weapon he thought was the strongest, the Blue Eyes White Dragon, could be beaten as long as one doesn't lose faith in their deck. It was even worse for him because he had 3 Blue Eyes on the field and all 3 were wiped out in one hit. The duel with Pegasus also doesn't end in victory for Kaiba, leading to him once again being turned into a card, waiting for Yugi to free him. As in the anime, the two brothers wake up separately in the manga. But unlike in the anime, it has a much more dramatic effect in the manga. Because the little boy who pieced Kaiba's heart back together properly is the first thing Kaiba sees when he wakes up in prison. And it's also this little boy who leads him to his younger brother Mokuba. When the two brothers embrace, the puzzle is complete and the little Kaiba dissolves like a spirit that has found his peace. The transformation from a heart of stone to a heart of brotherhood is completed. Even if the aspects of Season 0 weren't incorporated into Classic because they were partly too brutal, the anime could at least put Kaiba into a coma and let his heart be mended. Sure, the shift from I would kill my brother to I would die for my brother wouldn't be as significant as in the manga, but that scene was so brilliantly executed that just that page alone made me see Kaiba in a completely different light. Instead, in the anime, we only got Kaiba appearing like a Disney prince behind the gate.
Come on, let's not get all mushy and gooey, you know? I can't take it.
The journey continues for Kaiba and for us too, into Battle City. Here, the anime definitely fares better than in Duelist Kingdom. There are direct quotes from the manga, and the character development follows similar lines. That is from the original version, because in the dub, Kaiba hardly manages to develop at all from start to finish. In the dub, he remains closed off to the past and magic from beginning to end. The only progress he makes is giving Yugi a card in the duel against Marek, which turns out to be the key to victory.
Yugi, once I defeat you and go on to win this tournament, I'll be #1, not you. I've heard.
In the manga, and for the most part in the sub, it's a completely different development. In Battle City, Ishizu also asks Kaiba to organize a tournament after showing him the connection between himself, Yugi, and ancient Egypt. For this, he even receives Obelisk. Initially, he refuses to believe it, but then sees it as an opportunity, though he remains indifferent since it's merely a relic of the past and he's only interested in the future. And that includes the God card to defeat the only duelist he considers a rival, Yugi. Yugi, who helped him find trust in his cards. Yugi, who fearlessly faced all 3 Blue Eyes without doubting his deck. This is something Kaiba will adopt not only in his duel with Pegasus, but also throughout the manga and the sub.
デュエリストの最大の敵、それは己の心に潜む恐怖という
So Kaiba knew that Yugi would draw exactly the right card when he was in trouble against Krillin.
何も喋るな、木馬。よく見ておけ。真のデュエリストの可能性というものを。
He had to give Yugi a bit of a boost, telling him directly that he's one of the few he even acknowledges as a duelist. A favor that Yugi would later return when Kaiba doubted himself in his duel against Ishizu, and Yugi threw almost the same words back at him.
見果てぬ先まで続く俺たちの戦いのロード。貴様にも見えるはずだ。見果てぬ先まで続く俺たちのロード。
While Kaiba is no longer a cheater, has rekindled his love for his brother, and has found the heart of the cards, he's still a lone wolf who doesn't really get teamwork. He had to learn the importance of teamwork when Yugi and Kaiba dueled against the bumbling masked duo. Initially, Kaiba wanted to go through the duel all by himself, but soon realized that only teamwork could bring them victory. So they quickly switched gears and they won the duel. Kaiba acknowledges the importance of having reliable friends.
結束の力。この力は それをも超えているというのか。
That's why he immediately calls Mokuba and the helicopter after the duel when Marik, through his minion, reveals he has Joey and Tia captive without Yugi having to say a word. He called him and together they flew to Joey as Kaiba wasn't entirely convinced about the whole friendship thing yet. He wanted to see what would happen if one of these friends turned against him. In the anime, Mokuba gets kidnapped, which didn't happen in the manga, where he managed to escape through Tia's help, surprising Kaiba and Yugi with his helicopter on the roof. And since Tia saved his life, Kaiba wants to show his gratitude by flying Yugi to Joey. The fact that Kaiba is gradually understanding the meaning of friendship calls Mokuba on his own initiative and wants to learn more about it through Yugi adds so much more depth into this character. When Marik says Yugi's friends are in his control, Kaiba doesn't hesitate for a second and immediately called Mokuba. In the anime, it seems that he doesn't care at all except about Mokuba. In the manga, he acted right away. What they also messed up in the dub is that Kaiba intentionally threw his blue eyes at the rare hunter.
Say hello to my blue eyes white dragon card!
While in the manga and the sub, he had hoped it was a bad card and apologized to his blue eyes because he didn't have time for a second draw. After the duel, in the anime, Serenity plays the role of Ariel the Mermaid to free Joey from the anchor. While Kaiba does acknowledge Joey more as a duelist in the sub, in the manga he also drops the key to Joey, not just because he recognizes him as a duelist, but because he's slowly understanding the importance of friendship. Yugi was willing to sacrifice himself for Joey, just as Joey would have for Yugi. Something he deemed impossible. And that was the answer, what would happen if a friend turns against you. Moreover, almost everyone in the manga and sub understands that Yugi has two personalities, while the dub simply ignores this. Fun fact! Originally, Takahashi's plan for Kaiba was just to have him as the hire of a game company, constantly devising new games to eventually beat Yugi. However, he ended up having Kaiba play Duel Monsters again and tasked others with beating through different games. That was supposed to be all for Kaiba's journey in Yu-Gi-Oh! But the fans liked him so much that Takahashi made him one of the main characters and Yugi's rival. In the Battle City final, Yugi was in a tight spot in his first duel against Bakura. But when everyone thought it was hopeless, even Joey saying Bakura's deck was perfect and Yugi couldn't get out of it, it was Kaiba who didn't doubt Yugi but believed in him. Just as Yugi didn't doubt Kaiba when he almost lost hope against Ishizu. Now it was Yugi's turn to encourage Kaiba and help him out of his predicament. Yes, they are rivals, but they are also friends. And after all that, Kaiba immediately believes in the vision he got from the Millennium Rod, using it to end the duel with the blue eyes. Not only that, but he can also read the text on the card of Ra. Speaking of Ra, he really grilled Joey, who actually survived the initial attack. This impressed Kaiba so much that he finally recognized Joey as a true duelist.
最後にデュエリストとして認めてやる。
Nevertheless, he lost the duel, leading us to the fated duel between Yugi and Kaiba. This brings us to the biggest point and difference between Kaiba and Yugi. The major contrast between Kaiba and Yugi is that one wants to suppress his past and focus solely on the future, as he only sees suffering and hatred in his past,
俺の過去には憎しみと怒りしか存在しない。
while the other is determined to uncover what happened in his past and is fixated on that. Kaiba believes in the past and that he was a priest and Yugi a pharaoh. However, this is all the more reason for him to win the duel against Yugi, as it would allow him to bury the past. After all, the pharaoh is a symbol of the past, so also something against everything he stands for. So the duel is much more than revenge for Kaiba. It's a duel against his past at the old headquarters of the old Kaiba Corporation, Alcatraz.
俺はこのターンで貴様をねじ伏せ、俺の記憶に救う石板ごと粉砕してくれるわ。
But Kaiba is driven by anger and hatred, emotions that only lead to more anger and hatred. It's an endless search for redemption, which Kaiba will not find this way. To make this clear to him, Yugi wants Kaiba to attack him with all his hatred to demonstrate that this is not the right path. And he wants to show him this. Because they are friends. Only friends can pull someone out of the darkness. It was Joey's card that saved Yugi from defeat. And Yugi, by playing and trusting the card, pulled Joey out of the Shadow Realm. Speaking of Joey, unfortunately there wasn't a duel for third place between him and Kaiba in the manga, which makes absolutely sense, but I think we will talk about it in another video. Ishizu also speaks with Kaiba again, but initially all she manages to do is make him even angrier. It's only when Mokuba holds a mirror to his face that he sees things clearly. Friendship is important. Hatred is foolish. And if Yugi can't free Marik from Yami Marik, Ishizu will stay and go down with the island. Something that reminds Kaiba of himself. That's why he gives Yugi the keycard to defeat Ra. With this, Kaiba seeks the final answer for himself. He gives Yugi the card because he still doesn't quite believe in the power of miracles and friendship. With Yugi's 20% chance of winning, he just wants to prove his point. The fact that Yugi immediately includes Kaiba's card in his deck without hesitation shows how much he trusts Kaiba and the power of friendship. Unlike Kaiba at that point. But when Yugi draws Kaiba's card at the exact right moment, feeling without looking that it's Kaiba's card and setting it immediately, that's convincing enough for Kaiba. Through this duel, Kaiba completes his transformation. He realizes that hatred is a bottomless pit and starts to believe in the power of friendship himself. His true past lies beneath the rubble of his hate-filled past. It overwhelmed his true self and caused him to lose sight of his goal. By destroying the last remnants of Alcatraz, destroying the island, he also puts an end to his dark past. A moment unique to the manga. In the manga, there's much more emphasis on Kaiba's past with Gozaburo than in the anime, whether it's subbed or dubbed. Though, of course, the sub does a better job. Now he just says his goodbyes and together with Mokuba, he flies off to America to make his dream come true. Kaiba's character arc is complete. That's why the manga includes the scene where he puts his past behind him. A scene not present in the anime. Because in the anime, they still include Kaiba in the Orichalcos saga and the ancient Egyptian saga. The former doesn't exist at all in the manga and the latter does, but without Kaiba. He has nothing to do with it as he's in America pursuing a different goal. Kaiba isn't just a character who impresses with his coolness and wealth, but also through a complex and multi-layered development that we can follow in both the manga and to some extent in the anime. From a cold-hearted antagonist focused solely on victory and power, to a respected rival and almost tragic figure seeking redemption. Definitely let me know what you think about Seto Kaiba. Are there aspects of his development that particularly fascinate you? And do you see Kaiba in a different light after this video? Feel free to write it down in the comments. That's it from me for now. Here you go to the video about Marik. Here you can subscribe, and I think here is a random video or nothing. I don't know. But we'll see us next time, so take care my friends.